Okay, welcome to the next tutorial on how to draw these parts for the tow bar assembly. We're going to focus this tutorial on this piece over here known as the bolt MS. Let's first of all start by studying the different features that are given to us in the three-dimensional drawing. The first thing to realize is that it is made from one piece of round bar, and that round bar on the end has an external thread of metric 10 by 1.5 pitch, and the length of the thread is 15 millimeters long, so from the end to where it finishes is 15. The other thing to realize is that we can see that there's an axis line running down the length, and it is to, if it was to finish on a sharp corner here, it would be 86 millimeters long. Then from where that axis line meets here, if we were to measure that in a straight line, it would then also come in here at a distance of 40. We can see that there's a radius of 12 internally inside here, so that this section, this metric 10 circular section here, it can be blended from this end to follow this line, and then blended to fit another section on the other end. So we're going to use the tool called the swept blend, and we're going to start off by drawing the axis for the two sections to blend in between. So let's start off with this line of 86, a line at 40, which is drawn at 85 degrees to the horizontal, and then this radius of 12. So let's go to Creo. Let's create a new part like we normally would do. So I'm going to call this one Bolt MS 2015. Oh, not Bolly. Bolt MS 2015. And turn our planes on. And I'm going to draw this trajectory on the base work plane. So sketch. And just draw myself two lines which represent roughly the shape that maybe I'm after, and select, and let's make these two lines the length of the axis, so that should be 85, I think, and this one. Okay, now when we're not presented with the exact length of a line, so this is a dimension from the horizontal to a point, we may need to do some of our dimensioning ourselves. So click on the dimension tool, select this line, come across, send a mouse click, and we can see we now have a dimension which is parallel to that. So that was 40 millimeters. And the last thing to do is put the angle between this line and the horizontal line with 85. So dimension tool, once again, click one line, click the line I want to be at angle 2, bring your cursor between the two lines as if you were bisecting it, send a mouse button, and change the angle to 85, like so. Okay, so we've got the major 85 in, the 40 and the 85 angle. The next thing to do is to put a fillet in between these two of 12 millimeters. So come up to the fillet tool. I might just pull these dimensions away a little bit first so that they're not so confusing. And we're going to fillet between these two lines. So the fillet tool is located just in sketch. Here it is here, fillet. Move your cursor towards the right hand end of this line, move the cursor and select, and move your cursor to the left, sorry, top end of this line, select, and then you can see it just defaults to a standard fillet size. Go to select that dimension and change that to 12, and hit the enter key. Now what you'll notice here is that the dimensions for this axis have now changed their position. They've locked onto this fillet point, which is not what we're after. So what we might need to do now is just to redimension. So back to dimension, hover over that. You can see we've got some construction dotted lines where the axis was before. Click on one end of that line, wait for the blue to pre-highlight, click there, send a mouse button, and we need to just reconstrain that to be 85 millimeters. And then the same for this one here, the vertical one. So while I'm in dimension, click, and this should be 40 millimeters. and now that is held securely. So with that done, that is the trajectory actually drawn, and we can change that trajectory at any time that we like. So we're going to now move to the next stage of actually drawing a section on the end of this trajectory, drawing on the section on the end of this trajectory, and then sweeping a blend between those two sections. We'll come back later on and deal with putting the thread on and also putting the chamfers on the end here. So let's accept that sketch, even though it's not complete, so to speak, and we can see it there. There it is there in red. And this swept blend is a really handy tool that we're going to use. So click on swept blend, and because that was the only sketch that was drawn, the computer defaults to saying, well, that's the trajectory that you're going to sweep these blends along. One end of the trajectory has got this yellow arrow on it, which basically means that's where it's going to start now drawing a section. So if we come up to our tabs, we want it to be solid, and come down to this references tab here, and it's already defaulted to that is the trajectory. The next tab across is the sections. Now sections are the shapes that we draw on the ends of the trajectory to blend between. At the moment, if we look at section 1, there's a box that says unresolved beside it. Also, you have options here that if you maybe have already drawn some sections, you could select them by going select sections, and then you could come into the model here and select them. But we haven't drawn any sections, so back to sketch sections, and let's sketch a section on the end of this trajectory. So click on the sketch button. It spins that trajectory around. I'm just going to rotate it slightly here. You can see there's the end of the trajectory line, and what it's done, it's spun us around so we're looking at 90 degrees to the beginning of that trajectory line. And that's one of the only real requirements, is that when you do a blend, you must have the section or the profile must be at 90 degrees to the start of this trajectory. So I'm going to just turn it back to 90 degrees by clicking on my sketch view button there, and I'm going to draw myself a circle on the end of that trajectory equal to 10 millimeters, knowing that it's a metric 10 thread. 10 and enter. I'm happy with that. I've done one section, so then I can come up and accept that by clicking on the green tick. It then defaults, or that doesn't default, sorry, I've done one section, but one section is not enough. I need another section on the other end of the trajectory. So now I click on the insert button over here. You can see section 2, it's undefined, so I'm going to click sketch. It spins it around once again, and now I'm looking at 90 degrees. If you look here, spin it around a bit more, you can see now I'm looking here at 90 degrees to the other end of the trajectory. There's the first section. Now I'm going to draw the second one. Back to 90 degrees, click on the circle, click once, click twice, select, like we would normally do, 10 millimeters, and enter. And we're happy with that, its position and its size. We click OK. Now if we just move ourselves slightly sideways, we can see now what's happened. That section has followed this trajectory and it's blended with that section. Of course you can make these sections different sizes if you wish to, but that's not what we're after for our actual drawing. So I'm happy with that trajectory and that swept blend, I should say. So I click on our green tick, and we're ready to start the next part of the drawing. Now this is where it gets a little bit tricky. If we go back to our PowerPoint, we can see that the end of the bolt here has a thread. It's an M10 by 1.5 metric thread, and it's 15 millimeters long, which means from there to where it finishes is 15 millimeters. Now because we've created this part using the swept blend, Creo doesn't like putting a cosmetic thread onto that part there. I'll show you what I mean. If I go back to Creo, and if I was to select this surface like I would normally do to put a cosmetic thread on, if I select it, come up to Engineering tab, click on Cosmetic Thread, and unfortunately, even though I click on the Placement tab here and select a surface to put the thread onto, it won't allow me. It's got something to do with the way that algorithms are created and the maths basically when a sweat blend is created. So unfortunately we're going to have to modify this. We're going to take 15mm off the sweat blend, and then we're going to add it back on with a simple extrude, which we can then apply our cosmetic thread to. So I'm getting out of it just for starters. So how do we make this thing 15mm shorter? It's pretty simple. The section from there to there was defined by the length of the trajectory. So if we just go back to the sketch that we drew the trajectory on, edit definition, and 85 will be reduced down to 70 because it's 85 minus 15, because it was 15mm for full thread, and then we're going to add that back on with an extrude tool. So I'm just going to reduce that from 85 down to 70. You'll notice that everything else is still correctly positioned. Click OK, and all we've done is just shorten that by 15mm. I'll turn my planes off so I can see a few things. Okay, that's looking good. So all I need to do now is really just to select this surface on the end. I'm going to put a sketch on there, use my reference tool, get that outside edge, click close, draw a circle on there equal to the other section already, accept that, and then of course extrude this to a distance of, where are we, here we go, a distance of 15mm, and we're adding that on in that direction. Happy days. Okay, so now we can apply our cosmetic thread to this surface because this is not any longer part of the sweat blend. You can see the two are highlighting, and also in the model tree there's the sweat blend and there's the extrude. So I'm going to select that outside surface, come up to engineering, scroll down to cosmetic thread, and then you can come over here to your different controls for your cosmetic thread. Define a simple thread, define a standard thread. So I'm going to click on define a standard thread, and then I'm going to say it's an isometric thread, and it's an M10 by 1 mil, I think it said from memory. There it is there, an M10 by 1. And the last thing to do, you can see here it's asking me for a depth. So it's asking me where do I want to start the thread and finish the thread. So I click on the depth tab there, start thread from. So if I select that box, come down here, start the thread there, and you can see that it's defaulted straight away to 15mm in that direction. Obviously you can change, its length if you wish to, but we're going to make that 15mm. And we're going to select OK. So now we have a cosmetic thread on the end of that, and the last thing to do is to put a chamfer on the other end. I think that was a chamfer of 2mm chamfer at 45 degrees. So let's go back, let's select that outside edge, click on the chamfer tool up here in the engineering tabs, change it to, that should work, 0 by 0, but the distance is going to be 2. Oops, clicked off edge chamfer, where were we, there we go, 2, and enter. You can see now it's put a 2 by 2 chamfer at 45, click OK, and there we have our MS bolt all complete. Okay, see how you go with that one.